That is Cherry Audio's SEM. Moving over to the GForce SEM. Hello, gorgeous people. Tonight we're going to be checking out the Cherry Audio Synthesizer Expander module on the left-hand side of the screen, and then we'll be shooting it out against GForce Software's Oberheim SEM, so the only officially endorsed by Tom Oberheim himself plugin. And what's interesting is Cherry Audio just came out with the SEM, their version of it, for free for Christmas. So if you're watching this live stream or you're watching this video in the future, the link is in the description. I encourage you to go download it and check it out yourself. And I think maybe the question for this stream that I'd like to answer is, with so many free plugins out there and the quality is so good nowadays, is there even any point buying something like GForce Software's Oberheim SEM? Now, I want to say that with the caveat that I think GForce sets the new standard for software recreations of synthesizers. And if you love that Oberheim sound and you want that authentic thing, GForce is really the only way to do it. But Cherry Audio is sort of the new kid on the block that's been shaking up the market by putting out a lot of really great plugins for a very reasonable price. So yeah, to me, very excited to be checking this out tonight. And we're going to start the stream off just by initializing both of these guys. So where is the way to do a initialize preset? I think you just go to new here, and then over here on the GForce software, we can go in here. And I believe there's an init patch button, so we'll just do that. And a good way that you could check out which of the synths I'm playing, if I forget to mention, is you can see a little LED pop on. So this is the Cherry Audio one. And you see this little LED here. And then over here on Oberheim, on the GForce Oberheim, got this LED over here. So James Curtis, welcome to the stream. Hello, hello. So yes, the price on the Cherry Audio, free, cannot be beaten, but can the sound be beaten? That's the interesting question for me. So it's going to be really awesome too. Aquatic says UHE is absolutely top notch as well. Arturia is also excellent. Yes, and I do have the Arturia version. Full disclosure, GForce sent me over the Oberheim SEM to check out, and then Cherry Audio's is free, so I didn't have to pay anything for this, but I wanted to focus on these two, again, because although Arturia makes really great stuff, I feel like most people are going to buy the Arturia SEM if part of like the V collection or something like that, as opposed to just getting one plugin at a time like you would from GForce or Cherry Audio. And this will be a fun kind of comparison between the two. Seems like a lot of people like the Polymoog and the Memory Moog emulations from Cherry Audio, Kev. So I think you are in good company there. So let's go ahead and check this out. So this is our Cherry Audio synthesizer. And then over here on the GForce, we have... So we have to actually, to even get them close, we have to drop the transposition a bit. And the first thing is, what do we have to do? There we go. To actually get it to be audible, we need to bring the VCO2. Confusingly, the VCO mix section is in the filter area. That's just how it was on the vintage hardware. One more thing before we jump in. I don't want to hear any fucking comments in the description saying like, which one sounds closer to the original. I don't have an original Oberheim SEM. I don't have 10 grand to spend on an Oberheim SEM. So there's no way that I can make any sort of comparison. Even though I love vintage synths, I got plenty of them behind it. This is going to be a discussion about which sounds better to all of our ears. And I definitely want everybody in the chat right now to give me all of their opinions. That way we can kind of come to some sort of consensus about which one of these plugins sounds better. And then the secondary question being maybe with Cherry Audio one being free, is it worth buying the other one, which you can get for about 50 euros, which is still a really great price, by the way. Both the links are in the description. So I think I've cleared my throat enough on the topic, and we can dive into the sound of the oscillators. So let's jump over to Cherry Audio SEM here. Seems like if I bring this all the way to about 0 here, we can get just the sawtooth. And then I could do the same thing over here. It clicks over to the 0 mark, double click on the GForce. So that's something to think about. Okay, so that's the sound of that. Let's go ahead and do some octaves here. Ooh. That sounds really thick to my ears. Going to Cherry Audio. Almost identical. Just have a little bit more, what is that, decay? There we go. Jumping up a few octaves with the Cherry Audio. Jumping over to GForce. Hey, Revelry, how's it going? Cheers. Synth Theory says, gotta say, Cherry Audio's looks better to me. Not that that counts. I think it does kind of count, and I agree with you. It does look slightly better for being the free version of the plugin. Billy Bart says, as a professional UI designer, I agree. So, you know, just, I guess, on looks, we might actually say Cherry Audio's looks really great. I think they're both great. There's just a little bit more contrast with the darker knobs on the and the faux 3D-edness of it. It's a little bit more going on there. The shadows of the knobs are visible on the Cherry Audio. That's the one on the left. You get more of a flat look to the one on the right. So for what that's worth. Checking out the oscillators in the upper range. We're listening to GForce going over to Cherry's. Without a doubt, you can hear that it is brighter. That might have to do with the resonance. Let me see if I turn the resonance down. And then going over to GForce. All right, I really want to see. It's still slightly brighter. So there's a very subtle difference there, but you can hear a little bit more fizz off of Cherry, which is probably, I would guess, slightly less accurate. Anybody who knows or has spent some time with some vintage synths knows that a lot of the times the filters don't let all of those frequencies through. And so that might be a thing worth considering here already. A little subtle difference, definitely nothing worth the price difference so far. Let's go ahead and bring VCO2 in. So again, that's in the filter cutoff section here. And we can hear how the detune is. We're listening to Cherry Audio. Let's go up an octave and then play around with it. What I'm listening for here is the periodic nature of that detune. So you can hear how it kind of ramps up and down, right? Right? What I'm listening for is how much of that sound is going to be affected. It has a little bit of analog drift in it. So moving over to GForce, we're going to check it out. Interestingly, it seems like about the same semitones get you the same results. Maybe that's not interesting, right? That just makes sense. I don't know if I'm just... You guys let me know. It might be placebo effect, but to me, there's a little bit of drift or difference in the detune of VCO 1 and 2 on the GForce SEM that I'm not hearing on the Cherry Audio one. So again, back to Cherry Audio. Interesting that you mentioned stereo spread, Billy. what I'm hearing on the GForce one is just a little bit more. Sometimes it seems like it speeds up a little bit. And so that to me might indicate that they modeled that analog drift a little bit between the two VCOs. I don't know, hard to say. Let's go ahead and increase the detune further. Let's take it up. Let's see over here. Bring it up to 40 on both of them, right? And I think I can shift drag to get a finer. Okay, so this is another advantage of the GForce plugin, is that we can get some really fine control. It's very easy to hit whatever number you want, even though I believe we have the same range. The way it's scaled is very nicely, whereas over on Cherry Audio, it's less precise. So just something to think about. We're going to Cherry first, and we'll see what it sounds like. Moving over to GForce. Okay, so for my ears, it's definitely extremely close. I wouldn't really say that it's worth buying one plugin over the other at the moment. But again, you can see it's actually pretty hard to find a perfect number here if I want to keep it ideal. So we're going back to 18. Let's go ahead and take a second before we check out the other oscillators and things that we could do. Let's go over to the filter section. So we're moving over to the filter area here, and we'll do some filter sweeps. We'll do a deep one. Love a good deep sweep. Ooh. Ooh. Zum, welcome to the stream. How's it going, my friend? Sebastian says that the Cherry Audio SEM sounds fatter. We shall see as this filter gets involved. Go ahead, get back to streaming some. Thanks for dropping by. I appreciate it. Hypothesis, welcome to the stream. Going back to Cherry. It does, there's a little bit more. Let's bring it to about 200, right? And then we'll see how it sounds over on the GForce plugin at about 200. It's definitely a little bit more tight of a low end. Cherry has got a lot of bass to it. Billy says, weirdly, the GForce seems to have more fine detail, but the Cherry has more oomph. I think that's a fair characterization here. Where we're really going to start to notice some stuff is with resonance. So let's bring it up to about 25% on both. Again, much easier to find where you want to be with the GForce plugin. So for that reason alone, I think there's some advantage. Let's go ahead and do a filter sweep with the resonance at about 25%. Cherry Audio. Not a huge difference there. Moving over to Oberheim. GForce. Interestingly, too, this might be, again, these are very subtle details, but I believe that the shape of the filter cutoff is actually a little bit more exponential on the SEM. Checking it out on the Cherry Audio. Yeah, for sure. VCF is very linear, which is also giving it more time to sweep those lows and low mids. Look at the difference over here on the GForce SEM. You get a lot more high-end or mid-range quicker on the GForce plugin. It does sound very analog, though. Over here on Cherry Audio again. Come on. There we go. I think as far as just passing low end, the VCF on the Cherry Audio one is just really fat. I think that's not comparable. That's the first major difference. Now, is that accurate? I don't know. You know, that's kind of the fun thing. Lots of people are saying there's a little bit more detail to the GForce plugin. Hypothesis asks, on the Cherry Audio, have you tried to double click the knobs to type in a setting? Yes, so you can do that. You can double click, but what you can't do is, say for instance, if I double click a knob on the GForce plugin, it'll go to a default value. So if you want to hit it, I guess if you want like an exact number, so again, let's go for 50 over here. Very easy to get there. Over here, if I try to hit 50, it's going to be difficult, right? But you're right, I could just type it in, I suppose, if I want to get the exact same thing. So why don't we do a filter sweep now over here with the Cherry Audio. Now we've got 50% resonance. I think we're going to start to hear the difference around here. Interesting. Rich, welcome to the stream. Moving over to GForce. Ooh. Okay, big difference immediately. Moving back to Cherry Audio. You'll notice that we can go below 40 hertz. We can go down to 5 hertz. So look at this. Like, here is, at that point on the left there, that's the same frequency as all the way down on the GForce plugin. Now, depending on what you want to do, I mean, does this stuff really matter? No, not really. I mean, you can, if you're making your own sounds, it's just sort of how you tune these parameters. But what's interesting to me is that it goes so low, considering, so maybe it's not scaled different. I guess it's just 40 hertz is almost like, I don't know, 10 o'clock creeping up on 11 o'clock, you know? If I bring this to 40 hertz, let's say, let's just do a comparison with 50% resonance at 40 hertz, right? So that's where we're at. This is Cherry Audio. This is GForce. Back to Cherry Audio. Hopefully you guys have good speakers on. This is deep. So what I'm hearing is more of that low end being let through, but the resonance on the GForce Audio is quite impressive. That's a big difference. So I'm hearing more of the resonance having those sympathetic frequencies being pulled out at 40 hertz, whereas on the GForce, I'm just hearing the low end there. Anyways, back to... I have to say, the Cherry Audio plugin does sound great. I'm a little surprised by that. This is the first time I've been using a Cherry Audio plugin for real, which I wanted to capture live. I wanted you guys to hear my honest opinions. And I'm surprised by how good it sounds, considering how cheap their stuff usually is. And I don't mean cheap in a derogatory way. I just mean like they really put out plugins at below market value. But we definitely get, listen to the compression or the way that resonant peak. First off, the resonance is more pronounced over here on Cherry Audio. Lot less resonance for the value compared to the GForce version. Much more talky, right? That frequency is more pronounced and you really get that sort of chirpy filter thing that sounds so great. So immediately there's a difference. Why don't we go ahead and take it up to about 75%. We'll see what that's like, and we'll just type it in over here. Hypothesis, I appreciate you letting me know that. That's actually quite a nice way. And we'll start at 40 hertz for both of them, just to keep it fair. So we'll start this time with the GForce plugin, and we'll see how this sounds. Oh. Okay, Okay, so that's just at 40 hertz, like that low end. Hopefully you guys can hear this. Dekarmic, welcome to the stream. Hopefully I'm saying your name right. Let me know if I'm not. I'm just doing one more sweep so you guys can go directly from one plugin to the other. So we're still over here on the GForce Oberheim. Cherry Audio. Not even close. Like, not in the ballpark close, unfortunately, at 75%. And because you guys can see my vintage Oberheim back here, right? So I'm pointing at it right now. I think that's the one. Yeah. I can guarantee you that it sounds more like the GForce. Like, that amount of resonance, even on something as smooth as the SEM filter, which isn't fully self-resonant, you're going to get that peak. You're going to get those chirpy little talky, vowely, and the distortion and compression on that filter peak sounds so authentic to me. So what's interesting is, like, Bentinho, let me know how to pronounce your name as well. The sub is subbing, that is for sure, on the Cherry Audio plugin. So for bass, I mean, you might want that sometimes, but as far as the characteristic of the resonance, it's not there. Now, what I'm curious about is, can we get there with just increasing the resonance? So in this case, whoa, what's going on here? Everybody okay? Okay, computer freaked out for a second. Terror struck me. Let's see if we can get a little talkier with it. That's close. Let's go up to 85. 95. 95 versus the 75% over here on GForce. Back to Cherry Audio. Yeah, so about 95% on the over here on Cherry Audio is giving you about 75% resonance on the right. Oh, I'm totally yeah, let's see here. Dekarmic says, I've heard plenty of filter suites, but what creates that gliding lead sound that is often heard on top of it? I have pitch bending from note to note seamlessly. Oh, well, I mean, for one thing is these synthesizers can only produce one note at a time. So as soon as you hit a new key, right, you're on to the next thing. And that would be portamento is the glide. So it's called glide over here on the left. And then portamento is over here. And we actually have what appears to be individual control on the GForce plugin. So you've got global portamento, or if you just want VCO2 to glide, you've got that option. Hopefully I answered. Nathan, welcome to the stream. Yes. Billy says, I'd use both just for different things. The GForce for precision sound design, the Cherry for whipping up bangers. Kev Human says, VCO3 is different. Is it bipolar on the GForce? Not bipolar, but says wave noise. Yeah. Okay, so VCO3 is interesting on the GForce stuff. And we'll get into a little bit more of some of the expanded features. Actually, both synths have different features. So they have some similar ones. For instance, they both have delays, which would be echo over here. And then we have a delay mix, which we can then flip the plugin over and then check out the delays on the back over here on GForce. There's a lot going on with both. And we also have a Unison mode on the Cherry Audio version that we don't have on the Oberheim SEM. You would need something like GForce's 8-voice Oberheim to get some sort of unison sound out of that. So there's some stuff in there. Yes. Let's see. Nathan, we'll check out some of that too. We'll cover presets as well, actually. That's a good thing. But I want to just focus on the really fine details first, and then we can kind of talk about some of the more, I don't want to say obvious stuff, but like the stuff that you could read about, right? You can read about, it's that way in case I miss something, it's like you guys know that there is a VCO3 on the GForce plugin that's not there on Cherry Audio. So resonance 100%. And we're going to start at 40 over here on the Cherry Audio. And let's go ahead and start there. So why don't we pick a new note? Okay, so somewhere around an F sounds really... That sub be subbing. It's like an 808. Let's bring it up. It sounds good, GForce. Something actually different to the character of that resonant peak. Let's go for 2000, let's say. That's a nice, horrible frequency, right? That's right about, 2000's about where our ears are the most sensitive. So I can just bring this to about 2000 over here. Let's do that. And so comparing this, we're over on GForce. Cherry. GForce. Cherry. Yeah, so here's what you can say about the resonance at 100%. They're actually pretty close at 100%. You notice the differences more in the 50 to 75% range. But one thing I will say is the way that resonant peak is compressed into the sound on the GForce plugin is, once again, it's got to be more accurate. I don't have the analog hardware here to compare it to, but my guess would be, and I think I have a pretty educated guess considering we've got dozens of vintage synthesizers in this room, including vintage Oberheims, is to say that the way an analog filter from back then would work is as you push that resonant peak, it's going to compress that sound. And it just doesn't stick out as badly as it does on the Cherry Audio plugin. Again, that does not make Cherry Audio necessarily inferior for what you're trying to do, as I think Billy was saying. It's sort of like you could use both for different things, but I know if I was going to, if I had both of these plugins, which I guess I do, I would, just based off of this one thing, I would always go with the GForce plugin. It's up to you guys to decide if the differences that I'm hearing are worth the difference to you, because I mean, at like really quick blush, they are very similar. I am shocked at the quality of Cherry Audio's plugin. I was going into this maybe with a little bias thinking, you know, they might not quite have what I'm looking for in terms of it. What do you guys think? Yes. Gingy, how's it going? I love that video from Anthony Marianelli. He is so incredible at the way that he can dissect sound. Like, he's my goal, is to be like him. Kev says the Cherry seems to break up more when sustained. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, his channel's just awesome. It's interesting. I'll do some more sweeps just to really like kind of dial it in, but let's go ahead and go to 40 again and just check it out. You know, while we're here, before we move on to the other stuff, I just want to really focus on this because I don't know if anybody else has. It is cool, the resonance and the way that the filter lets a little bit more low end through on the Cherry Audio plugin. Like that to me sounds great, that low end talky thing. What's up, Hans Volt? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Speaking of vintage Oberheims, my jealousy for your Oberheim expander never ends. I'll probably mention it every fucking stream you show up. How's it going? Isn't this interesting that at 100%, the GForce plugin is a little more tame, whereas over on the Cherry Audio, like I said, the resonance is really sticking out. It's a little ice picky, which to my ear is a bit less pleasing, but they're both really good. I mean, they're very close. It's shocking how close they are. But going back again to 75%, that's where you really hear a difference. And at 75%, man, the GForce plugin just, it really has a character to it. Going over to, we'll start on GForce. So talky, so great, vowely, chirpy. Wow. Cherry Audio. Not even close. So it's really interesting that most of the range of the resonance happens all here in the last 25% of this knob, and that it actually ends up just a little bit more ice picky, a little further forward than the filter on the GForce Oberheim SEM. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if this is the type of thing that truly matters, but there's something there to it, right? I mean, there's something to those differences. Now, having gotten real cork sniffy and vintage synth snob, can I get some scum snobs in the chat for a second to really pick apart the resonance between these two plugins? There's no doubt in my mind that, you know, for almost all sounds, the differences can just be tuned out by doing different values, right? So if you want, you know, you can't set the knobs to the same positions, and that applies to more like attack, decay, sustain, all of that stuff too. They're not one-to-one. I've tried to match those first two sounds a little bit, and they're not really there. They're different. But what I would say is it's interesting, those little differences. So let's go ahead and dial the resonance back on both of them. We'll set this to 40 again. And let's move over to notch, everybody's favorite, right? So we'll go to 50% over here. And then I wonder if I double click, it will go to there. So we'll just go 50-50. Again, there is just something nicer about the UI control for the GForce plugin too. I'm just giving you guys my honest opinion. I just want to say that again. It's not because of, I mean, I really hope that neither Cherry Audio or GForce hates me at the end of the stream. I think it's almost impossible that one of them won't dislike what I have to say a little bit more. But it's kind of the nature of doing a comparison like this. One of them is going to stand out a little bit more. Billy says there's a chaos in the Cherry. I hear a little bit more again with the GForce, but that's what it is. Crystal Love says, I just love that we're in a time where we got all this great gear available to us. I remember being Lil and dreaming of some of these hard to find buy synths, and it's great so far emulation has come. I totally agree. We are living in the golden age, Crystal Love. Let's see. Love some synth snob dogs. Nathan said, Cherry really made a killer synth, and the GForce is the one maybe for the original sound. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing too. I'm coming at this a little bit from a cork sniffing vintage synth snob perspective, but as far as like just making music, there's nothing different enough in the characteristic. Do I think the GForce resonance is better and more authentic? Yes, I do. Do I think that it's like you can't use the Cherry Audio one for 99.9% of stuff? No, I don't think so. DeCarmick says, what do you think about music theory plugins like Scalar? I don't fuck around with them too much, to be honest, so I don't want to give an opinion. There's been a couple of stuff like Audio Modern makes some cool stuff. I need to get more into that stuff. I know music theory pretty well, at least enough to be able to compose. It's kind of like, I don't really need a lot of help with that, so that might be part of it too. I've just kind of got it on the back of my hand. Yes, the Peak and the Summit are very awesome synths that are overlooked. Let's go ahead and, so where are we at? We're at a notch on both. Let's go ahead and check that out. So going up a little bit. So jumping over to, we're listening to Cherry Audio now. Notice how this peaks out actually at 16. And then over on the GForce, it peaks out at 22. Just interesting. Back to Cherry Audio. There's absolutely a difference in these in the notch filter here. Let's go for 650 or so. This sounds particularly hollow, right? Very hollow. Let's go 650 over on the GForce 650. Let's go 642 and we'll go back over here and do 642. So it's fair. We're listening to GForce. Yo, Dub Station Zero. How's it going, Nick? Have a awesome time performing tonight. Cheers, brother. Can we get a cheers in the chat for Dub Station Zero? Thank you guys so much. Have a great gig tonight, okay? DeCarmick, unfortunately, I don't really have the best thing for that. I will say I did, if you go to my channel, you'll see producing a synth pop EBM track that's in there, and I do have like a 30-minute section just on composing, arranging. That's like a kind of okay place to start, but it's not the best place. Belize asked, did you already produce a track with the Sems? No, I have not. This is the first time I'm experiencing them live. Kev says, I have all the Audio Modern stuff. It's great, but I don't use it that much. Good for days when you got nothing to show. Cheers, guys. Ed from Earth, welcome to the stream. How's it going? So, GForce SEM. Cherry. GForce. Cherry. There's a little difference in there, right? That's not to say that it's, you know, again, it's very subtle stuff, but it is in there. I just, again, it might be placebo effect, but I just think I prefer the sound of the notch filter over here. Let's go ahead and bring this to 50/50 again. And let's just check it out with resonance and see what happens. I won't spend as much time. I thought the low pass filter was worth spending the extra time on. Let's crank it. Not a lot happening with the resonance cranked. You can hear more of that sound. Weird. I wonder, that almost to me sounds like digital ringing. Yeah, it's a thing. It's not really doing a whole lot. Let's bring the resonance all the way down. High pass. And we'll set this to 40 just to check it out. We'll go to Cherry Audio. So you can hear already it's chopped off a lot of that low end. EMD M.Ambient, welcome to the stream. How's it going? Haven't tried him out, Dekarmic. Not yet, anyways. So this is an example where it's kind of nice that this plugin goes below 40. We'll do one more sweep from 40 up, and I won't say anything. I have to remember the temptation not to talk between them, so you just really hear the difference. So without a doubt, we can get higher. It even says so numbers-wise here, right? So we can go to where we're hearing nothing on the GForce, which we can't do. And all the way at the bottom here, let's hear just the 40 hertz, no resonance. We're listening to GForce, and then we'll swap over to Cherry Audio. Let's pay attention to the low end, okay? That's what I'm trying to sort of deduce here. So we actually get more low end from the GForce plugin here using the high pass. Now we can dig much deeper down to 5 hertz and get plenty of low end on the Cherry Audio. So at 40 hertz, it's a difference. Once again, the GForce plugin kind of giving us maybe what's a little more authentic, but we can go deeper. So for, practical purposes, it's actually quite interesting. Let's go ahead and bring this up to 16,000, and we'll do the same thing. We'll just go all the way up to about 16. Let's go, okay, 5713, 15713. And so we've got the same high pass. So here's the high pass on the same value. This is Cherry Audio. Very thin. GForce. Thinner. I really like the character of the GForce plugin. Let's increase the resonance to 100%. GForce. Cherry. Not close. Back to GForce. Really precise. Sven, welcome to the stream. I've got tons of CA synths in humble bundles lately, and of course this one for free. So I've been enjoying CA synths on the cheap. Yeah, they're really incredible price-wise, and the quality is there. Let's do the filter sweep down from 15317 or whatever it was. So this one, the ice picking nature of it, which isn't that surprising because it's a high pass filter, is even more noticeable, where you could hear what I'm talking about, how that resonant peak is just not as compressed. It's not as integrated into the signal as it is on the GForce plugin. So, this is all pretty, it might not be that interesting to everybody. Let's go ahead and move it over to bandpass. You'll see that grays out here. And I don't know if that's the case on the GForce plugin. So let's check that out real quick. Does bandpass change as I move this knob? Let's put a random mid-range value. Yeah, so I kind of like that it grays out on the Cherry Audio plugin. From a UI perspective, I think this is actually kind of better because you get that sense of like, oh, okay, that's not being used anymore. Whereas on the GForce software, we don't really get any indication either than it's on or off. So that's just something to think about. Let's listen to this bandpass filter on the GForce plugin with the resonance all the way up. What the fuck? Appreciate all the space emojis, Gingy. Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to pretty extreme resonance settings, I think the Cherry Audio plugin's just not to my liking as much, but I have to admit the differences are very subtle. I don't know outside of an example as precise as what we're doing here, which is not as precise as Starsky Carr's videos, but you know, it's a live stream, we're just figuring this out live. I do not know that these differences matter because the character is there, right, with Cherry Audio. It does sound like the GForce plugin. The differences seem to be largely in scaling and some amount of quality when it comes to the compression and integration of that signal. It doesn't sound quite there, but I mean, I feel like I'm splitting hairs in the difference there. M.Ambient says, damn, I've just counted 17 Cherry Audio synths, only one GForce. GForce products are always amazing, but you can't beat Cherry's bang for the buck. I agree with that. Nathan asks, have you tried Arturia SEM? I have it as well, but I didn't want to do this comparison because I didn't want to like overcomplicate it and have 3 SEMs. But what I did think too is that, you know, most people are probably like you, Nathan, where if they're getting Arturia SEM, it's going to be part of the V collection. I don't think as many people are just buying the SEM on its own from Arturia. So I thought this is the more fair comparison because everybody's really excited about Cherry Audio's free SEM right now. And then GForce is the official endorsed Tom Oberheim plugin. So that's also very interesting sort of to compare that. So what do you guys think should be the next thing we should cover? I think we've covered that. We'll turn the bandpass filter off, open the filter all the way up. We've pretty much dialed in the filter, and the filter's probably going to be the biggest difference between these synths. And so the fact that the filter is actually very close, you know, well, we'll get to analysis at the end of the stream about what I think is worth going for. So we're turning VCO2 off now. So we're just hearing Cherry Audio. Oh, and let's bring this over to low pass, right? Now we have control over if we want it to be a saw or a pulse. And we have control over the pulse width. So we can go to 10% or 90%, but not through it. Maybe we can with an LFO. We'll have to see. Let's go ahead and do the same thing over on GForce. So what we're going to do is take the saw all the way over and bring the pulse width all the way up, right? All right, so little Tiesto action. So here I'll play this higher C note, and I'm going to then jump over to Cherry Audio, and we'll just see how that sounds. Back to GForce. I mean, it sounds to me like slightly, a little bit, maybe of a difference, but I think this truly fits into the category of like, I don't know. I don't know that there's anything here worth saying one way or the other. The Oscillator sound virtually identical. I would go so far as to say that I'm pretty sure the Oscillators sound closer to each other than one Oberheim SEM is going to sound to another, because any analog circuitry, there's going to be differences. So let's go ahead and check the pulse width out. So we're over here on GForce. So let's Interesting. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but I'm sure you probably can. Actually, you guys have better ears than me. Pulse width is different as you go to 10% over on the GForce plugin. It actually gets narrower at the 10% mark. Interesting. That's a very interesting difference. Otherwise, I mean, I think it sounds about the same. Let's go ahead and see at 90% here, if we can push it with the LFO. We can. So what I'm doing is this is the modulation amount from the LFO here being routed with the LFO section here to the pulse width. So we're already at 90. So this is the most extreme thing we can do. We're listening to Cherry Audio. GForce. Cherry Audio. Can you hear that? There's like a little bleed from the Cherry Audio. Like there's a little oscillator hiding out in the background. Very subtle. It might get eaten up in YouTube compression, but man, is that a big difference to me as well. It's not there on GForce. So on GForce, you get true through pulse width 0. On Cherry, I'm shocked by this. You might be able to hear it best if I play the lowest note. You hear it. You guys can hear it. It's like a little fizz. Just like, you know, it's like a 15,000 hertz note, but it's there. Now, does this really matter? I mean, I don't know. I can't help but think that this sort of, you know, really synth nerdy stuff that I'm doing right now probably is not going to affect anybody's music, right? When you go to actually make music, it's probably going to be fine. But for me personally, yeah, that's kind of non-trivial. Like that's a non-trivial difference. Let's take pulse width down to 10 on both of them and see what the difference is like. GForce. Very clean. Cherry. So, you know, again, there's subtle differences. It's not make or break stuff, but it does make me wonder what's going on that we're going on. Insult Productions, welcome to the stream. Autumn, have a wonderful night, okay? Take care. Continue to be excellent. Yeah, interesting those little details there. Let's go ahead and modulate. Let's bring the pulse width back to 50% on both of these guys. I can just double click. Again, it's very nice on the GForce plugin. It's just double click and there we go. But then I guess you can get more precise by typing in over here. Let's go to envelope 1 and hear how that affects the pulse width. This is interesting. So it actually, yeah, it's taking it very high. Let's go see how this works over on the GForce SEM. So moving over to envelope 1. Making sure I'm following this correctly. Isn't this interesting? So with the decay at, let's say, 50%, that's 300 milliseconds. Why don't we just set this to 300 as well? And we're going to take the sustain all the way up and the attack all the way down to 3. We'll make it 3 over here too, just to make it fair. Envelope 1, pulse width 100%, pulse width 100%. Yeah, otherwise it looks like I have these identical. So this is GForce. You're basically hearing that pulse width drop. Cherry Audio. Nothing. Let's slow the decay down. Wow, this is very strange. Let's bring the sustain all the way down so we hear that decay. GForce, bring sustain all the way down. Okay, so here's an area where I think the GForce plugin is just undoubtedly superior. It just sounds so much better for getting these sorts of beautiful MZ string stuff. Hey, thank you for subscribing. We're listening to GForce here, moving over to Cherry Audio. I mean, there's nothing even happening. I have to use so much less of that mod amount. Back to GForce. So, with the pulse width modulation at 100% here, right? We're getting this sort of sound. Back to Cherry Audio, our modulation is 42%. This is pretty much GForce. Yeah, so just, I mean, immediately this is an area where I think the GForce plugin is superior. And although I guess there's maybe some theoretical advantage to being able to push the pulse width further with the modulation, to my ears, here would be the question for me. Why would you need so much modulation amount with a harder to fine-tune knob to the pulse width so much past 100%, right? Which cancels it out, going through 0. Why would you do that? Or like, what's the advantage there? If somebody here like is smarter than me and is seeing an advantage to that, point it out to me. But I don't see why you would need it to go that far, right? Does anybody see a reason for that? That should just be 100%. Like what's considered 40% here should be 100%. Because what's the advantage? Does somebody have any sort of a thing? Not just that, but I can't help but think that the pulse width amount is more accurate on the Tom Oberheim stamped plugin. So this just seems like a flaw to me. Now again, I mean, is this a something you can't just imagine in your head that 38% or so is 100% and just always use values between here and here? You're good to go, right? Nothing's really changed. But to me, as a commentator, as someone who's thinking about the difference between these synths, that's a non-trivial thing. I don't know. you guys let me know. I think that is something. Why don't we go ahead and move back to the LFO and just make sure pulse width is at 50. So we're over here on the Cherry Audio. Sounds pretty good. What we're going to do is bring this modulation amount up for the frequency. And just compare that with the frequency of the over here with the LFO. Just to see what the frequency range is. And then we'll check out the LFO rate as well. Let's see. Back to Cherry Audio. Okay, so the range is a little bit further on the GForce plugin. You can hear, Nathan says, I guess I'm just not hardcore. I mean, this is what I think about. So this is GForce, Cherry Audio. So again, more of a subtle thing. You know, it's again, I have trouble thinking that I necessarily would dock points from the Cherry Audio synth for something this subtle, but it is there. It's a thing. Let's check out the LFO rate. So we're over here. We can take the LFO pretty slow, down to 0.08 hertz. Very slow, all the way up to... Bring the sustain all the way up. Get those types of sounds. GForce plugin. Let's bring the rate all the way up. So slightly slower. Cherry Audio. GForce. Cherry Audio. So it goes both slower and faster than the GForce plugin, which to me is not necessarily good. I like a nice constrained LFO that is going to give you more vintage results. The thing about vintage hardware, in my opinion, the reason why vintage hardware sounds so good, 85% of it is not the sound of the components itself. A lot of the times it's more the constraint of the designers of the hardware. We're much more like, okay, let's have a usable LFO range. So the LFO doesn't go too slow, doesn't go too fast, and you get one of those synthesizers like a Juno 106, where it's hard to turn the knobs and faders to anything that doesn't sound great. That's why vintage synths sound good a lot of the times, is because of that constraint that the designers had. Around the time that digital synths became a thing, so I'm thinking of more synths that, like the Corgam 1, for instance, then it became possible to push what could be done with an LFO much further. And it was like, well, why don't we just have the full range? This thing could go really slow and really fast, and we'll leave it up to the user to pick it. And that's fine, but what can happen is you get a lot of unusable values in there. So in this case, would I say that that's really happening with Cherry Audio? No, I think the Cherry Audio plugin's still within the range. The pulse width stuff is bothering me a bit, but the rest of the plugin, the differences are there, but they're pretty subtle. I don't think they're something that should be, that you should torment yourself about. I think it's pretty good overall. So let's see. Sven asks, I wonder if they'll ever update this since to fix that now that it's free, or if that would break people's patches and piss off the user base. Yeah, it would break people's patches. So OBXD 3.0 just came out and this week, and they deliberately had it come out as a new plugin. That way you could load OBXD version 2, in your DAW or whatever, if you used it in another, like if you made a patch or whatever, you could use that and it would work, which I think is pretty cool as a way to avoid that problem, Sven. So, yeah. Let's see. We've covered that. Let's just cover the envelopes really quick. So what I'm going to do is turn decay all the way down on both. Let's turn the modulation to 0. Just make it 0 over here. Very easy. One click, modulation's off, right? So we should have about the same sound. Cherry Audio. We're going to bring the decay, sustain all the way up. GForce. Yeah, basically the exact same thing. Let's bring the filter all the way down. We'll bring the filter down to 40 Hertz, so that's consistent. And we're going to increase the modulation 100% positive. We can go positive or negative, which is a nice feature. And we're going to use envelope 2. And so you can see here, this is a limitation of the SEM, the original hardware, not necessarily of the software. But we can use the envelope or the LFO to modulate. I think with some of the features in the GForce plugin, we can get away with some more, maybe VCO3 and stuff like that. But for now, I think it's worth that, checking it out, that we'll just do it like this. And so what we could do is bring the sustain all the way down, attack all the way down, and what's this decay at? 443? So we'll just put in 443. Now I'd like you to notice that the knobs look about the same on both, right? So going over to Cherry Audio, let's bring the resonance up to about 90%, right? Which is about 75% or so on the GForce plugin. Come on, baby. Oh, I was double clicking, which was resetting it. So listening to Cherry Audio here. I want some more. Let's bring it up to, let's go for about, so 21, 20, 31. Boom, let's try that out. Let's check it out on the GForce. Resonance is actually still a little hot on the GForce plugin, which is crazy. M.ambient, yes, I imagine that is the case, that they are this, using the same code as those bigger ones. C-Ray asked, did the LFO go into audio rate with the SEM? Not really. I would say it's still in the wiggly vibrato range. Back to Cherry Audio. GForce. Okay, another subtle thing, but I have to point out the stuff, right? I guess that's kind of my job here, is listen to the curve of the way that ADSR works. It's more exponential, which is how an analog synth is going to be on the GForce. So when you think about a linear curve is going to be very flat, right? So it's just going to be all the way flat. And an exponential curve is going to have more of like a sharper, like it's going to start slower and then it's going to get faster towards the end, right? Listening to that and imagining this in your head, you should be able to hear that the filter cutoff hangs out higher on the GForce plugin at the top than it does on the Cherry Audio one. And you can hear it kind of like, as it comes down, it drops off a cliff more towards the end. Cherry Audio. You can hear it's much more linear as it coasts down, right? So it's going to be, again, this is subtle. I don't think it really matters when it comes to making music, but it's less analog. It's more how a digital synth is. So it's a way, this is one of those things that you can hear how much detail went into this plugin with the Oberheim, that they really tried to get that sort of exponential curve of the ADSR right that's not there on Cherry Audio. Now, does that matter? Probably not. But I mean, at the end of the day, it probably doesn't matter. But I wanted to, I think I think that's worth pointing out, right? I mean, up here, it's probably not even going to matter, right? That's Cherry Audio. If I jump over to GForce. Let's try it with this note. Cherry Audio. You can actually hear it pretty well even on this note, so. Very linear on Cherry Audio. More of like a coast, and then it drops off the cliff a little aggressively on the Oberheim. So, just, again, it's, those differences do matter. I don't know that at the end of the day, that's going to be the thing that makes anybody buy the plugin over not. Yeah, the ADSR curves just do sound good, M.ambient. I think so. The Cherry's is much flatter, Billy. Yeah, it's a linear curve. This is subtle stuff, but I mean, it does all add up. So I think I've done a good enough job sort of talking about the main differences here. I'm going to go ahead and put these back to sawtooths on both plugins. That way we can just really hear it. Open up the frequencies, turn the resonance all the way off. Listening to GForce. We just have a nice sort of sound over here on Cherry Audio. I mean, virtually the same, right? The frequency different? 18 versus... Okay, so this is interesting. It actually is a little bit more detuned on the Cherry Audio synth. We're getting less detuned for the same semitones. Down low, it's the same, but as that's detuning is not, is scaling differently as you go higher up on the notes. So again, very subtle stuff, but it does contribute to the synth being more analog sounding with the GForce plugin. I want to check out a couple of things that are different about these synths in terms of design and the extras that both synth companies put in. So one thing that's just killer is that we have a Unison mode on the Cherry Audio synth. So that's going to be adding a bunch of voices, stereo voices. Sounds really monstrous. And there's just nothing like that with the GForce plugin. So there's just not a lot going on that's going to give us something that adds that kind of hugeness to the plugin. And the reason for that is because GForce sells the Oberheim 8 voice. So if you want to get those big Unison sounds, another great way to do it is with their new plugin, OBX from GForce. I did a review on this channel very recently looking at that plugin. Awesome for great, huge, massive sounds. But in the case of just comparing these two, that is a very cool feature that Cherry Audio added to get super huge. Aquatic says Oberhausen also has Unison, so that's super cool. So with that in mind, you know, that's one thing that's different. M.Ambient says, I expected GForce to outshine Cherry Audio, but at 6275 better. Probably if you take into consideration the rear panel features on the GForce version. Yeah, we're getting there. I can only imagine, Hans Volt, you son of a bitch. Yes, it does sound really good, Sven. So that's a thing. We have got Portamento and stuff. People want me to spend more time on Portamento. I find that kind of boring. That's where I tune out when it comes to differences. I'm like, just set it to whatever you want. I guess if it doesn't work, then that's okay. But otherwise, like, just do it. We have an arpeggiator over here on the GForce plugin that we don't have on the Synthesizer expander module by Cherry. And where is the rate? So that's a really cool thing. It exists, right? And we can add some octaves if we want. So, you know. We can also put it into different modes. So if we wanted to do random, for instance, I could play an interesting chord, something, you know, out of the blue. And we could hold that. Sorry, I needed to do that. We have DAW start as well, but let's hold it real quick and just see what we get. But what that's going to let me do is actually be able to tweak these filters while I've still got this one chord going, right? Jedediah, thank you for subscribing. Yeah, so that's a really great feature that we don't have anything like that on the Cherry Audio. So, you know, just if we were only looking at those two things, which there's more going on with GForce and Cherry Audio actually, but just comparing those real quick. Unison versus arpeggiator. You know, for me, Unison adds a little bit more, but for a lot of people, that arpeggiator is really important. And I don't want to always have to load a separate arpeggiator plugin in front of or route, or God forbid having to route a fucking arpeggiator plugin on a MIDI channel to that, right? Like that is like, I hate that. So especially for a mono synth, I think having an arpeggiator is huge. So let's see, catching up with the chat here. Let's go ahead and check out the delays. So we have a delay. Let's mix it 100%. We'll do the same thing on both plugins. So jumping over to Cherry Audio. I need to turn it on. I guess we'll go 50%. That's probably a better... Actually sounds really good. Very dark. Jumping over to GForce, we'll put the delay mix to about 50%. It's just the default. Oh, we need to turn this up. Less dark. And mono. At first blush. Back to GForce. Sorry. Cherry. Very stereo. Sounds very good. I quite like it. We have a feedback amount, time. We can leave it unsunk. I don't know what the proper word is for that. But where it gets really powerful is then if we flip the plugin over. So if I go up above, just above the screen here, I've got the flip the plugin over option on the GForce plugin. And then you can see we actually have a lot of controls here. So for instance, we could get much more stereo simply by changing the delay times left and right. Now it's very stereo. We have a high pass filter, so we could get that really thin, I guess. But I don't see something to make it darker. What does this mix amount to? Oh, this just duplicates what's going on the left and the right. Oh, it's so heartbreaking, though, that we don't have a low pass filter or something in here. The reason being that, you know, for me, vintage synth, I kind of want to have like a vintage tape echo type sound that maybe I could get out of this. So something that's a little darker and whatever. Now, there's times you want a high pass filter, right? So that it's, for instance, you're playing really low. I don't want those delays really fighting with it. So that lets it get out of the way. Now, if I go back to Cherry Audio, we're going to have that darker sound. So you can hear how that delay is just eating it alive. It's actually almost don't hear the synth at all. I have to bring the wetness down. Yeah. So in certain circumstances, you don't want that really thinner sound, right? But when you're playing up high with this type of sound, I prefer the sound of the Cherry Audio delay. Very clean, though. I mean, actually, they're both really awesome. It sounds great on both. Cherry Audio. Yeah, for me, I mean, now that I'm fucking with it, I'm like, if I was doing this in a track, I probably would want the thinner one. But there's just something about listening to it on its own that sounds so good. Zazilla, welcome to the stream. Would be great to know your guys' take on the Arturia Obi as well. Yeah, so I said it, that although I do have the Arturia SEM, I didn't want to compare it because it would be a bit, you know, like I think most people who have that plugin are getting it as part of V Collection. Yeah, definitely. Zazilla, have a good night, okay? Let's see. T-Ray says, I will say Cherry Audio has way more presets that are designed very well. I don't think so. I think Cherry Audio has about 100 presets. If you look at all presets here, we got about 100. And with the presets of over here, we've got a lot of presets. I don't know how many we have, but we do have a lot. Like a lot on the GForce plugin. So, you know, for what that's worth, as far as the numbers go. But that's the thing. We catch up with the chat a little bit. That Cherry Audio delay is the bee's tits, man. Yeah. That's definitely a thing. I would say that it sounds very good. Let's compare a couple of other things. So if I go back to the delay, I can just turn the mix off here and we can listen to the phaser. So Tom Oberheim made a phaser. It was like his first real, I said plugin, first real product. And so we have that phaser modeled in Cherry Audio, which is super cool. Interestingly, that it's stereo. So that sounds really cool. We don't have an equivalent to that in the GForce software. However, I will just take this second to plug myself here. Let's go ahead and open up Inktomi. So this is my plugin. It's weird because of the way the shape of the thing is, but we actually have a phaser built into that. The plugin's link is in the description as well. And so we could just move this around. Sorry that it looks weird on screen, but going over to GForce real quick, we can hear how my phaser sounds on it. So anyways, that's a thing that exists. My plugin is real, and we can you can use that free plugin. Again, links in the description if you want to get more of a phaser type sound out of your GForce SEM. Totally free, by the way. If you sign up for the email or whatever it is. M.Ambient says, I turned the tone off built-in effects and use other plugins. Sure, I'd probably tend to use the same effects in a lot of synths, which makes their synth sound samey. Yes, and I don't know that I would say that they're the best. Let's see here. Kev says, I would put the Cherry Audio through Arturia's MS-20 filter. Yeah. Hans, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I do. I make one plugin. I'm working on my next one. But right now, I have one plugin out. Link is in the description of this video. Totally free. And it's a chorus, phaser, ensemble, and reverb plugin. And it's basically designed to be as simple as possible. It's only got 4 knobs. Inspired by one of my favorite vintage analog synths from 1981. Just trying to make something that's very useful to everybody very immediately. So that's my goal with that plugin. So I hope you find it helpful. What we do have, though, is we've got VCO 3. Well, let's talk about the reverb first, actually. So the reverb on the GForce plugin is awesome. And we can go, like, let's just go massive size decay and everything. So it can go forever, right? Basically. And we have control over that. We have a nice little tone knob so we can like bring it and make it really dark like a lexicon. Interestingly, the mix doesn't wash out the synth. I talked about the reverb from GForce a bit on my review of GForce's Oberheim OBX, and I was talking about how great it is. There's the link for the Inktomi, my plugin, in the chat right now. It's very good, and it's not metallic or ringing at all. So there's absolutely an argument to be made for using that. It's very good. It's very dense. It's got like a very diffused sound, which isn't the most vintage sound, right? Nowadays, plugins and pedals can use a lot more complicated algorithms to be able to have much more diffused, lush, modulated sounding reverbs. And that's what we're getting here. It's just like a really professional, really great sort of almost replaces something like having to buy an expensive boutique reverb pedal, like a Big Sky or something. But it isn't the most vintage thing. So that's my one little like thing I would ask for from GForce is to be able to get it to be a little bit more lo-fi sounding, just because that I think is cool. But I understand why they didn't do that, right? Because I think most people would argue that reverbs have only gotten better over the years. But I'm still one of those guys who's like still into that lexicon. Sven, that's a secret. I think it's like a hint. Let me say it that way. It's a hint. What are some other things we can look at here? Well, we've got a lot going on the rear panel here. For one thing, we have velocity controls. So we can have it affect a lot of different stuff. How much velocity affects things like the cutoff. So if we flip the plugin back around, we can bring the frequency down. Add some resonance too. Just so we can hear it flipping it back over. If we add, we have much more control depending on how hard you hit the keys. We can add resonance to that as well. Which sounds really, really great. Yeah, it's just awesome. Mode, I think, allows the velocity to move the from low pass to notch or something like that. So that's pretty crazy too. So if I decrease the resonance now and just bring resonance all the way down here, so we're just not doing that. So if I play slow or quietly, we get these sort of notchy type sounds. And if I hit hard, we get a kind of more just thin sound. So it's really awesome what you can do there with that. And it can go negative as well. So this is a really great feature. So if I increase the frequency, if I play really hard, we get almost nothing. And if I play quietly, we get a lot. So there's some uses for that. Sometimes you don't want it to react the way you would necessarily think of. Oh yes, I'm so sorry to mention that Inktomi is Windows only currently. That's on the list of things to get done. But it's just the case that I am one guy trying to make cool things by myself. So I just don't have all the time in the world to dedicate to doing these streams, making videos and everything. So Inktomi will have a Mac version. I hope to God. Like, I hope it's possible for me to do it. It seems like other people are able to do VSTs on Mac, so we'll hopefully get there. Moving on, we can actually do velocity to pulse width. Let's flip this back over and... Oh, we'd have to be over on pulse, right? Do I still have that going negative? Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah. See, Ray, I haven't even developed enough to be able to know that, but it does seem likely. So we can do all sorts of stuff like the envelope to VCO1, amplifier of VCO3. We haven't even talked about VCO3 yet. The shape of the oscillators. So in this case, we could have it become more of a pulse, I think, if I hit harder. So let's make the pulse width really narrow too, but then make VCO1. So let's see what happens. Let's bring that down. So if I play quieter, it's more of a sawtooth. Right? And then hard is a thin pulse wave. Yeah, so it's just crazy how much you can do here. So let's go back to, we've got rid of all of that. Let's bring the pulse width down. We got a sawtooth sound again. Let's add some movement with the LFO, right? We're gonna get into some like kind of dubsteppy wobble type stuff. just for fun, so that we could show off we actually have a bunch of different shapes here. Triangle's the default. Square wave. Sample and hold, so we could increase the rate here. That's super cool. So we've got different LFO shapes here. We can just go back. We can re-trigger it so that each time we hit a note, it restarts. What is intro? Is that like a fade in? Yeah, it's a delay. All right, Nathan, have a good night. So again, we don't have an option for, or with LFO 1, what we're ending up with is something that's much more flexible than what we have on the Cherry Audio plugin. Having said that, we can sync the Cherry Audio plugin to our LFO rates to our DAW, so you can see here that it becomes, you know, dotted amounts. So that's interesting as well. But really, it's VCO 3 that opens up what can be done. I should mention here, we've got filter tracking so that we can have the filter get brighter as we increase this amount. That's a really cool thing. You guys probably know what that does, right? I guess I can demo it real quick. So if we just turn down the mod amount, and then if I increase filter tracking, it follows as I play. So that's the thing. And you can adjust the center, which is super cool too. But we won't use that for now. Definitely a huge feature that I think is awesome is if we wanted to make like a... we'll go to envelope 2 and increase the mod amount. Really juicy brass type sound. Now, if we use Aftertouch to the filter, we can use Aftertouch to increase the filter amount. So we can start to get those, you know, big Blade Runner type sounds, right? In this case, we actually could use a little less mod. And really get this just really awesome sound. I mean, isn't that just gorgeous? Ah, so good. So anyways, we can use, let's say, VCO 3, for instance, to control the... So we'll increase this a bit, and we'll turn Aftertouch down. We have other options too. We have amplifier, mod 1, mod 2, LFO. So Aftertouch could affect the LFO rate, if I'm looking at that correctly, and I understand what it is. So let's go ahead and... Let's move that over to the LFO real quick. And then by increasing Aftertouch, we can now control the rate. I'm going to have to turn that reverb down because it's drowning out my mic. We can control the rate of the LFO using Aftertouch. Also a super cool feature. I love that sort of thing, controlling that. So yeah, just want to point out, I mean, just like the craziness of what's possible. Sven says, I just heard the ghost of Vangelis. Yeah, that's what I'm shooting for here. So just with these two sections here, filter tracking and Aftertouch, I mean, that just extends this plugin so much. So I know we got Unison over on Cherry Audio, but we got a lot going on here. And by the way, many soft synths have Unison, right? But what you want from a SEM is not necessarily a Unison sound. You want something that sounds authentically vintage. And I think that's what they captured here really well. Going back, let's have VCO3 now involved here. So now we're not using LFO1, we're using VCO3. It's weird, it sounds almost like filter FM. Let's go look at VCO3. So, yeah, it's like doing some filter FM-y type stuff or whatever. We can change the wave shape. Very interesting. So I think VCO3 right now is behaving as a third oscillator, but just being routed to the filter. Really interesting. I don't exactly understand fully what the relationship is here. But it's doing a thing. It does sound amazing, right? So like immediately it's a very good. And of course, VCO3 is off, but we could use it as another oscillator. Or we could use it as noise. Again, we have noise over here on the Cherry Audio. Let's go ahead and turn the reverb mix all the way down. I just want to compare noise real quick. We've been sort of ignoring Cherry for long enough that let's make both of these 50. Or I guess 0. And then bring up the noise on Cherry Audio. So that's how that sounds. GForce over here, resonance down all the way up. We'll put both of these off and make VCO3 noise. Interesting, a little brighter maybe? GForce has both more high and low end. It's a very, that would fit into the category of things I don't really care about. That difference in noise, it's there, but, you know, I don't know that that's going to necessarily make anybody's day better or worse. So yeah, I think I've touched on at least some of the stuff that's going on. We can use VCO3 as a mod source. So you could use, say, the LFO to affect the VCF, but VCO3 to affect the pulse width, right? So if you want to get different results than what would be possible on the hardware, where you only have one LFO. Yeah. It's interesting. I think that, you know, GForce Audio has done something pretty incredible here. And I guess now would be a good time for me to ask you guys, so I'll go ahead and put it in the chat. Let's go ahead and have a poll. So, is GForce Oberheim SEM worth the 50 euros when Cherry Audio's SEM is free. So I want to just preface this with this poll. Just dropped it in the chat. I'd be very interested to see what you guys have to say. What I'm asking is, before you answer maybe, is considering that money is tight for all of us and we just can't buy all of the plugins we want, does the GForce module for you, the answer is for you, is it worth the $50? For those of you who don't have the Cherry Audio plugin, would you just go out and spend $50 for GForce? Because the Cherry Audio one is so good and it's free. That would be the question for me, because they're so close in terms of just like the basic stuff. GForce, of course, adds some cool new features. The Echo and the Phaser and the Unison on the Cherry Audio plugin are arguably better to my ears. I like all of that. Unison and Phaser are not present on GForce Audio, so that's a thing. But there's a lot more going on synthesis-wise that you can make happen, obviously with like Aftertouch and everything with the GForce Audio plugin. So from that perspective, I do think it adds a lot of functionality that's, although not authentic to the original hardware, it is like, nowadays we want, like, I love plugins that really stay true to the vintage integrity of that old hardware, the crusty old circuitry, and I want it to have that sound, but I want velocity and Aftertouch, god damn it. I don't care if it wasn't authentic. You know, I think that's just like a genuinely, like, step forward. When it comes to sonics, as compared to expression, I do like vintage sonics. And the Phaser sounds good. I mean, I don't have the original hardware either for that. But, you know, if they cost the same thing, it would be very easy for me to recommend GForce's software. I would just be like, it's GForce all day. But I don't know for myself that I can say that it's worth the $50, because I would just say take that $50 and apply it to something else, right? I think that's where I would land if I was answering this, personally. Not trying to sway anybody. I want to hear what you guys think. I want your honest opinions. Yeah. Billy Bart Cody says, GForce sounds as good as Oberhausen, if not better. Worth the price. Belize says GForce is the winner. Crystal Love says, yes, Billy. Billy said Nathan bought it earlier tonight, but he left just a short while ago. Sven says, that $50 goes into getting a whole different synth plugin. The Cherry Audio SEM covers that SEM base for me. It might not be perfect, but it's free and gets me 90% of the way there. Sven, I have to say, I think I agree with you that I would probably be more likely to download the Cherry Audio SEM and just spend that $59 on GForce's OBX plugin, right? If I was recommending vintage synth software to a beginner or someone who doesn't have a lot, I would probably say something like that. I don't know, considering how great the Cherry Audio... I'm really shocked. I'm shocked that they got the character of the filter so well. Like, don't get me wrong, I did have my little nitpicks about it compared to the GForce software. I think GForce is on the money. I think Cherry Audio's is, like, a little different. But the character is there. Like, when we compare vintage synths on this channel, which is the thing we do, by the way, if you're watching this video but you haven't seen my channel before, every Wednesday night we do a different synthesizer-related thing. And mostly it's with hardware synths from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, a couple from the 90s. And when we're comparing filters with that stuff, you know, you can hear a big difference in just the character of the filters, not just the amount of resonance and stuff. I think the filter character is very consistent between these two plugins. I was very shocked by that. So, Hansvold says, If you do make this comparison video, the free one is the way, but since you showed us all which is better, well, GForce. Aquatic Borealis says, also important, Alex, is the CPU usage. I can actually tell you that right now. I'm using 0.13% of my CPU, and if I move this over, I can see I'm using 0.03% on the Cherry Audio. So I might be able to get that down if I lower the... No, it looks like that's not the case. So it looks like, yeah, just the GeForce is using a lot more. 0.13 is not much, but I've got a pretty beefy computer, so I can't promise that. But there is a difference. I mean, like, that's a pretty substantial difference between 0.03 and 0.13. So if you're using a laptop, older computer, stuff like that, which I know a lot of us are, then that might be relevant. If, you know, but I think they're both pretty well done. Billy says, if it were integral to my recording, I would buy the GeForce. That detail was impressive. You could carry a track with that sound. Machine Storm says, for SEM, I'll stick to Cherry Audio. The Imposter is definitely worth $50+. I'll have to check that out at some point. Crystal Love says, I think you'll dig Cherry's other synths, Vulture. I would love to check it out sometime. Cherry Audio, if you're listening, send me something cool. It would be fun to check out some other stuff on the stream. Especially if you have any of the synths that I have. You know, they make a Chroma Polaris plugin, don't they? For some reason, I think they make a Chroma Polaris plugin. That would be really interesting to check out the Polaris versus their version of it. Let's see, let me catch up. Julia Bondar, Gingy says, has an awesome channel. Check her stuff out. She was using the new Ghost pedal with the Summit. Made me an Innovation hybrid believer. Definitely should check that out. Oh, with the motor synth, yeah. Aquatic says, I'd like to see you try Diva from UHE. I would too. I'm very impressed by Tyrell N6, but Diva seems to be the ultimate sort of vintage synth. It's like Serum, but for vintage synths, where it's got that character. We had a discussion on the Vintage Synth Facebook group about... I did a video where I compared Tyrell N6 versus my Korg Prologue, and it sounded so good. And then there was a discussion about... by a fan, someone I'm a fan of, Miles Away, really great YouTube channel. Miles Away chimed in that he was like, here's how you do a filter sweep on Serum, and it sounds like super dry and digital and boring. And here's how it sounds on my sequential OB6. And immediately you get that sound that's just that like classic Oberheim filter growl. And so when you just hear Serum versus that, you go, oh, okay, yeah, I see why people like the hardware. Someone else, though, countered his audio file with their own using Diva, and they used, like, whatever randomization features and, like, analog stuff in Diva, and that one sounded even better than the actual Oberheim analog hardware, sequential hardware at the time. Machine Storm says, SEM was the gateway for me to do Elka X. Yes. Yeah. Kev says, enjoyed the comparison, but I have no money left, so it's Cherry Audio for me. That's the thing, too. I'm very value-oriented on this channel. I'm always trying to get the most value for your money, because a lot of the people who hang out in chat are experienced synthesist users who have a lot of synths or have a lot of experience with synths. But there's 30,000 people watch this channel every month, and 10,000 or so are returning viewers. So I'm aware a lot of those people are beginners, people who are trying to get into synthesis. You know, it's like what you use YouTube for, right? Where you I don't know how to fix this thing on my car, or I'm gonna go Google it real quick, and then you pull up a YouTube video. So a lot of the people who watch the channel, I imagine, are people beginning off in synthesis, and I don't want people to feel like you have to spend a whole lot of money. C-Ray asks, will you ever check out the third wave? I would love to, but I'm not going to buy a third wave. At least not at full price. I mean, if Groove Synthesis reached out to me and was able to hook me up a little bit, I would love to check it out. But I don't see them doing that because there's so many other YouTubers they've already reached out to. So I would love to, especially because I love the PPG Wave sound. But it's an expensive synth, and people ask me about this, and so I'll just clarify. The reason I don't own any modern synths, right? All of my synths are vintage. So I'm not like encouraged to go in that direction. I did love the Prologue, Billy. I ended up selling mine just because I wanted to go all in. I bought the Polaris with the money. Yeah. Let's see here. Our Quadra, yes, that's another thing. Oof. Aquatic says, UHE is no joke. I used to doubt, but then I tried a couple of their synths and was converted. Yeah. Spent way too much money on Unify libraries, Machine Storm. UVI synths, they're another one that I'd love to get into because they have some really cool, like, I love the vintage and Sonic and Kwai stuff, and they have all of that. Gingy says the Diva Reese bass. Yeah, for sure. Gingy says, I'm grateful you show the affordable synth options. That's my goal on the channel. Billy bought a Hydra synth with his Prologue money. It's probably the way to go, just because the Hydras with the polyphonic aftertouch. I mean, it's really exciting the time we're in right now. I would say the kind of tail end this quarter has been about polyphonic MIDI controllers with native instruments and Korg coming out with them. So I think we're moving into a polyphonic aftertouch world. So anyways, I often don't say this, but at the end of the stream here, I'm going to end the poll. It was 75% said yes, the GForce Oberheim SEM is worth $50 even though the Cherry Audio plugin is free. That's pretty awesome. You know what I mean? For GForce, right? That their stuff sounds so good that even with a free alternative, that people would prefer to spend their hard-earned money on 50 euros worth of GForce technology. Now, that's what everybody here said. If you're watching this video, you're a beginner, or you just don't have a lot of money, my message to you would be the Cherry Audio stuff is pretty... I came away from this one impressed by Cherry Audio. I was not expecting to think it sounded as good as it did or to nail it as close as it did. I remember taking the... remember they put out that thing, can you tell the difference between hardware and software? And everybody was doing it. I could tell pretty clearly the difference between hardware and software. I didn't think that their stuff sounded all the way there at the time. It seems like it's gotten better. So... let's see. Hans Volt says, I kind of hate it. Are you talking about the Hydra synth or the Cherry Audio plugin? Yeah. GForce is doing good work. $50 is affordable. Yeah. C-Ray says, never change GForce. So, yeah, guys. I think we'll call it there. And, yeah, definitely, I mean, I'm impressed by GForce, and it seems like everybody else is here, but I thought, for me personally, Cherry Audio's stuff... You know, I might have to check out more of their stuff now. I was kind of hoping, in a weird way, that I wouldn't like it, so I could just write Cherry Audio off and just be like, okay, I'm done. I don't really need to think about them anymore as plugin manufacturers. But they really, you know, if I wasn't comparing it to... It would be interesting if I had the actual hardware here. I might actually have a more favorable view of Cherry Audio to the hardware if that resonance is to be believed to be close on the GForce plugin, because if it sounds that close to the hardware, right? Let's say hypothetically the GForce plugin sounds identical to the hardware. It sounded really close to the GForce plugin. So the difference between the plugin and the hardware in that case would be negligible. It would be enough for me to be like, yeah, this is close enough. And if that's not the case, then both plugins would sound different than the hardware, right? Because they sound pretty close. So very interesting. Let's see here. Take 5 is an awesome synth for sure. Virtual String Machine for sure, something to be checked out. Super Gemini is the dream. I agree. If I was to buy one modern synth, it would probably be that. I would love to check that one out. It just seems like as good as it gets. But for now, I'm Vulture Culture, and it has been a pleasure. Stay excellent, you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.